You are watching. There, I had to hit record because I forgot to record until we started going live. This is Zoe. You're watching Simply SCAdian, no title required, where Lucas and I talk to regular folk in the SCA who are not peers, who are not landed or court baron and baronesses. And this week's guest is a really awesome dude, but I will let Lucas take it from there.
Yeah, so just once again, just to review the format of the show, we talk to the regular folk of the SCA, the people who make up the majority of us, and you know who those people are. So once again, we invite you at the end of the show tonight. At some point, hit us up on our Facebook page, fill out the Google form that's there, and let us know. Maybe you want to talk to us and you think you're a good candidate, or more likely, you know somebody who we should talk to. So whatever walk of life they're in the society, bards, artists in some way, anybody who's into service, anybody who's into fighting, we want to talk to them about their process, about their journey at this level. And remember, no title is required for that. So tonight, we are welcoming Tomasso Franceschi, as we just learned. Thomas the French guy, as I just learned, is the direct translation of his name. There we go. And so just a quick little primer on Tomasso is some sort of down market Norman French who settled in, can you say that for me? Friends, after marrying a local girl, adopting the name they gave him, or I do not wish to subject heralds to Germanic, Gaelic, or Welsh names. But an organist, a choir director, continues to play most anything with a keyboard attached professionally. He also plays fretted strings, classical and modern guitar, ukulele, which he's currently learning Renaissance guitar repertoire. He also plays quite a bit of hand percussion and a very little bit of recorder-like instruments. Knows a lot of stories, most of them are period. And I must admit, I read this wrong the first time, but it says also a bread nerd, which I read as a beard nerd the first time, and it confused me royally. Who naturally has a starter in the fridge. And he is the premier apprentice to Dame Estelle de la Mer. So welcome to the show, Tomasso.
No, you're never gonna live that one down. You
I
little
know. The
weird
first time
lover. You.
I was scanning it through, and I was like, beard. I was like, all right. I do remember him having is that like poems and oils and unctions and things? Like, I don't
That's
really
a
know how
thing. That's really a thing.
it really is a thing. I get it. But I was like, that's an odd. I've never heard of anybody in this in the SCA who was like, who could really just talk about like, well, if I was going to make a period beard, I would.
Okay. All right. Hi, Tomasso.
There are people who do very serious work with hairstyles, and most of them are into this hair, which I'm losing. But perhaps you'll find someone that does that, and you can interview them.
That's it. If you are a beard lover, drop your name in the submission form. All right. So Tomasso, I know you mostly because of your music. I mean, you are really an experienced instrumentalist. Like, you just blow me away with your ability to hear a tune and play a tune to
your music. I mean, you.
feedback there. Okay. So tell me, how did you get into this? Was it when you were young? I mean, obviously when you were young to be as skilled as you are. So tell me how you got into music.
My parents sent me to Yamaha Music School when I was 5. So I've been doing this for over 50 years at this point on keyboard. And, once you learn one instrument, another one, you don't have to learn the notes over again. It's kind of easier. So you just
unless it's in a different, because I played the viola. I couldn't read that clef again if I tried. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, you pick it up, you just keep doing it, and then eventually you're doing it forever, and you're fairly decent at it. It's kind of, it requires a lot of focus and sitting in your room by yourself with your instrument, and it's what they say of musicians is to spend all our time locked up in our room communing with dead men, mostly, occasionally women, occasional dead female composers, but living ones are much more common. But you're trying to reproduce the thought of Bach or the thought of Monteverdi or the thought of Beethoven or even the thought of someone modern like Steve Reich. You don't live inside his head, even though you could go down and talk to him. If you're going to do a piece by him, you kind of have to fill in the blanks that the music doesn't give you, which is a big, really the difference between someone who's playing notes and someone who's playing music. There's a lot of people who can play notes, and some of them can play notes really, really, really well, but they're not conveying anything except the notes. And if you hear someone who's making music versus someone who's making notes, when you learn the difference, and you'll see, gosh, they're not playing any wrong notes, but the music isn't doing anything for me. That's why.
Yeah.
And it's one of those weird things that's very hard to put into words unless you are some kind of a musician. It would be like, imagine someone doing a table read of a play, and they're doing a table read of a play, but they're not really understanding where the character is coming from. They're not reacting to the people across from them. They're just reading words. And that's that transition from words into the performance. That's really the hardest thing to do. It's hard. There's a lot of moving parts because the first thing you have to do is learn the notes, learn the words, learn how you control this hunk of wood you're holding in your hand in a way that it makes sounds that are reasonably pleasing. And then you have to be able to take all those moving parts and then put your expression and put your heart and put your soul into it and have it come across in a way that doesn't sound like it's encased in amber, which is, especially with Bach, music by Bach and earlier, and Mozart to a certain extent, it's very easy to get into the regularity of the pattern and have it be just regular. And when the music is so highly structured as it was in the earlier times, it's very hard to do because there's so much structure, and you have to keep the structure, otherwise you're losing the music. But to get expression out of that, and that's where the art is to music, well beyond playing the notes or even singing the words.
So it's like Shakespeare.
Can be.
Yeah. Lucas and I talk about that, when we're performing Shakespeare, how it's easy to go ba ba da 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 ba, but that you got to break that down into its real meaning. So do you prefer, this is a hard question, I guess. Do you prefer playing the stuff of the time period in the SCA over modern stuff, or am I comparing apples to oranges?
In the SCA, I prefer playing period songs. I don't play a whole lot of SCA songs. I don't play a whole lot of filks. I'm mostly working on something period. I don't even like to write stuff in a period style. Now, part of that is I had spent a couple of years at Manhattan School of Music as a composition major. They taught us how to write 15th century counterpoint. Oh, did they tell us how to teach us how to you write so much of that crap? It's like, I never wanted to look at Gradus Barnasum ever again as long as I live. So you really, but I love singing it. There's a lot of it's beautiful, especially when you can get. A couple years ago at Bardic Madness, when it was out in Chicago, I just grabbed Beatrice and I grabbed two other people, Master Christian and Mr. Celiana from North Shield, and said, let's sing this. And we just pulled it together in about half an hour. And that was amazing because we'd all done it before, and just get together and make artistic decisions very, very quickly. And you can do that with musicians of the grade of, Eliana and Christian and Beatrice.
Right. Lucas, questions? Because I could go down the merry path of music for more than an hour with Tomasso.
I was interested to keep going in that direction. I was
Okay.
going to say, so you what types of music do you primarily write then for performance with the SCA? If you're not really performing like, SCA music, do you do you write it like in the style of or in the spirit of? Is that kind of thing? Or
No, I tend to do stuff that is actually period.
okay.
You know, so I won't write a song in the style of Martin Said to His Man. I'll just sing Martin Said to His Man.
Okay.
Or Bring Us in Good Ale. You know, there is so much material, especially since I started playing the Ren guitar stuff. Ren guitar stuff's written for essentially a 4-string instrument like a ukulele. In fact, almost identical to a baritone ukulele. So you can play all of this music, and there's a lot of it, and it's all really, really, really good. So you can. It's not there's no such thing as running out of material in the time that you have. So I don't write a ton. I have some ideas and I execute them, and they're kind of all not for prime time. So you don't want to, you know, pour too much into it when it's not going to be played anywhere.
So how did you find the SCA?
Back in the 80s, I was devirusing someone's computer back when you did that with a set of floppy disks.
Oh, I remember those days.
You know, back when before you two were born, I'm sure.
Thank you, but no. Go ahead.
But yeah, we're over at somebody's house in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and they had armor in the corner, and the woman was a heavy fighter. So the first heavy fighter I met was also the first female heavy fighter I met.
Nice.
And talked about it. And we went to a couple things back then, but then really didn't get involved until we moved out here to Michigan, and I kept running into demos. And kids thought it would be fun to fence, so we went down to fencing and started stabbing people, and that was fun. And the armored people were there, and I started playing with them and beating on people, and that was fun. And then ran into occasional musicians and stuff, and that was fun, and other stuff. Oh, it's fun.
So your whole family is involved.
We all were at one point. The kids kind of aren't anymore, and Beatrice isn't as much. She'll come to Bardic Madness. She'll come to St. Cecilias, which is a period music thing in our region.
Can you talk more about St. Cecilia's for people that are from other kingdoms? What is that event about?
St. Cecilia's at the Tower is unfortunately run by mistress whose name I cannot pronounce. I'm so sorry, Monique. I cannot pronounce your name.
Jadwiga. It's Jadwiga, isn't it?
Jadwiga. I'm not sure.
I think it's Jadwiga.
All I know is I'm afraid to attempt it. Over in Cinnabar. And she and her husband run this event, and I think Mistress Kasha is also involved. She's from the region and another music world, and it is all period music all the time. We get out our various I bring my drums and bring that to the instrument petting zoo, and there's crumb horns and hurdy-gurdies and all kinds of period instruments, and everybody's either doing period music or talking period music, which is like, you know, the antithesis of Bardic Madness, where all just sort of show up and are doing different, you know, completely different things. That's the St. Cecilia Tower. If you're in driving distance of Penamere, usually takes place either April or May, depending on the year. And if you want to know a lot about period music, that's the place to go.
Yeah, it's a great event. I went there once and had a really great time.
Yeah.
And I should say for our viewers that Bardic Madness, Midrealm, Bardic Madness is an event around Bardic challenges that was started in North Shield, and then it was launched. Bardic Madness Midrealm came into being, and so there's two different Bardic Madness events. There's the North Shield one and the Midrealm one, and that in North Shield's usually in April. Not sure what they're doing this year, and the Midrealm one is in the fall. So hopefully we'll be able to have that this year. That would be great.
Is asking you, oh, God.
It's been via Zoom meeting the past year, which is interesting in its own right, but it's not the same as being full of a whole group of people. And
yeah.
Is asking you which instrument you prefer like asking you which child you love best? I mean, is it, you know? or do you have a preferred, instrument that you're like, if given I can only play this one, I would always play this?
Well, I'm much better on keyboards. The problem is keyboards are very big and heavy, and they either require electricity or they're incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
You would need like a semi to haul an organ around. It would sound incredible, but you need a semi. And to be period, you'd have to have an organ apprentice to run on the treadle. You could have Tomasso's gym, have people run on the treadle while people play the organ.
So I keep when you see me sort of look zoned, it's because I'm checking our Facebook feed and making sure everything's going okay. So I do want to talk about bread because I love bread. So when you talk about loving bread, tell me where did that come from? Is this a new thing? I know so many people with COVID started baking bread, especially.
No, I have been baking since I was about 10. There were 5 of us kids, and mom made her own bread. And so I learned how to make it from mom and been doing it ever since. And now mom doesn't have a starter, and she kind of looks at me weird because I'll just come to her kitchen and I'll dump a pile of flour on the table and make a well in it, mix it with water. It's like, here's the bread. How did you do that? You do it enough times, just about, if you're going to make a loaf of bread that takes a pound of flour, you know about what that is. And you just do it. And my willow scroll is all bread puns. Estelle did a marvelous job with it. It's like, rise, O populace.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so that is the other thing I wanted to ask you about. I don't know, well, our first guest was an apprentice, obviously, but what was that like for you? How did that come to fruition for you to become apprentice to Dame Estelle?
Started a few years before she was elevated. We were cleaning up after some event in Pomerlot, so it had to have been Winter Revel, and we were just walking around doing stuff and talking about stuff, and it occurred to me that in terms of the elusive PLQs, she had a lot that I lacked, and I asked her and if at that point she'd be my teacher. And so I kind of been along for the ride through her elevation. I brought her back fabric from China because that was in China when she was elevated. And then I got to be the first.
Does she have others? Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have 2 sisters.
Nice.
I think I have a sister and a brother.
I broke him. Okay,
Things are hard to remember.
Lucas,
Oh.
do you tell me how many sisters and brothers do you have?
I have 1 brother, and I believe I have 4 sisters.
There.
We're gonna get a nasty note on the family.
I know. You know what it was? Is the minute you started to go like, I looked down the box and I was like, she's gonna ask me, and I'm gonna screw this up.
You are.
I'm gonna screw this up.
So when you talk about family,
because I was there when 2 of us were adopted, but I'm not sure about the third.
Okay. So let's go back. Let's go back and forget that question. Okay. Tell me what it's like. Being an apprentice is a big change, you become a family. What has that been like for you?
Well, I was adopted right before at 12th night last year. So right before everything shut down. What it is for me, especially, someone to tell me when I'm being stupid.
I understand that.
Which is very useful. Was one of the, we talked about before, as a musician, you tend to get very internal. And if you see me being extroverted and performing, that's acting. That is 100% acting. I'm the world's biggest introvert, and I love to sit and commune with my instrument. And sometimes that can come across as being kind of a grumpy old fart sitting there. Try to not look so mean. Things like that are really, really obvious to someone looking from the outside that aren't as obvious to me, because I got my guitar in my hand and I'm concentrating on my music. And if we were socially adept, we probably wouldn't have wound up in this nerdy hobby where everybody grew up a nerd. So it's
Yeah.
and,
So
and
what's
just
the family like for you?
it's a good group. We're nice to each other. Haven't had arguments yet. We'll see when we start seeing each other in person, I'm sure.
Yeah, Lucas is so lucky. He's all the way out in the East Kingdom. He doesn't have to be near any of his siblings.
I've only ever met them virtually.
Yeah.
I was adopted on a screen, and then that's where I've kind of existed ever since. So,
Well, you had one in the East.
I did, but I handed him off to someone better suited. It took two men to make up for one Zoph.
I can see that.
now, Tommaso, in your mundane life, do you work with music? I know you said something about the working with computers, but you went to school for music. So is it like, what do you do in real life that connects to this?
I do church music. I play club dates with a band, and for actual money, I work in aerospace.
Okay. Oh,
We have
wow.
yeah, we program the computers that fly the airplanes, but I'm completely useless at anything IT related.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was, if it was like that. That was, I at Penzig, I camp with a sister camp. We're kind of two camps on one space, and right now they're called Nomadia, and some of them are some wonderful musicians, and then you find out that like that's just their passion. It's not their job. So I love to hear that like people are kind of just when they adopt that persona, that they get to be that person, kind of in their society life. So
engineering is very musician heavy. Every place I've worked as an engineer, you could put together multiple bands from the staff, and that's even true in China. So it's something about being some kind of a math nerd where the music thing just appeals to us. And you've seen that in community theater where half the actors are attorneys. Because they have a job where they can, they talk, and then they get on stage, they can still talk. So
You keep talking about China, and I know that I've known you as long as you were in China, but tell us about China and what that experience was like for you going there for work was it a year or two?
I was there 2 years full time. Prior to that, I'd made several trips to support that organization in various capacities. The primary part of my job was to tell them no, because they're trying to build a passenger airplane, and passenger airplanes, as you might expect, are fairly heavily regulated. So China's approach to regulatory law is a little bit looser than our approach to regulatory law. So you have to have a lot of conversations that are, how about we follow the regulation and do what that says, and you have to keep asking a lot of questions. The thing of the culture is you can't ever say no. You can't ever say no, because that causes them to lose face, and there's no way to gain face. You can only ever lose face in East Asian culture. So you couldn't say no. So you would give the correct answer, and then after 3 times, at least it had to be 3 times, you couldn't do it right away. Then you could say, what are you trying to do? And very often what they were trying to do was perfectly straightforward. They just couldn't do it the way they were trying to do it. All white people are billionaires.
Good to know. Dang it.
If you were,
I didn't get the memo.
And if you're not Asian, they will come up to you and they will rub your arm to see how hairy it is, or to see if the brown comes off if you're darker than they are, or to rub your hair because our hair is weird. Uh, so it's, there's there's a few things in the language that are challenging.
I'm
And
impressed that you actually learned the language because I understand it's one of the hardest languages to learn.
Which dialect?
the one they call Chinese, or we call it Mandarin.
I was going to say,
Mandarin.
yeah, Mandarin.
Yeah. And honestly, the only thing I've retained is how to order a latte.
Smart. Everybody should know how to order. That's your next challenge, Lucas. Learn how to order a latte in Italian.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so I did. This is unfortunately welcome to how our brains work. Boop, ba-doop, 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 ba-doop. Pinballing. One of the things you talked about earlier when you talked about joining Dame Estelle and what you admired about her was PLQs. And I think the hard thing when we talk about PLQs is how vague and ambiguous peer-like qualities. PLQs are defined as peer-like qualities. What When we talk about PLQs, what is it that you think in generic, not you personally, Tommaso, but in generic terms, what is the myth about having PLQs?
The myth?
Yeah, what there's tons of myths about PLQs, right? So what do you think PLQs are? Forget the myth part. What do you think they are? How does a person develop PLQs? Talk to me about your thoughts on that.
How clear? Do I have to be PG?
No, we have this is set for everybody. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Don't be okay. I have to tell you that I was very blessed that the first peers that I met, and the first knights that I met, and the first pelicans I met are people that I still admire, and that we had a really great local group. And it wasn't until about 5 years of playing when I overheard someone being snippy about someone else's garb. And it's like, you're picking, I just walked past you in my crappy garb and you're giving grief to the 16-year-old. You're just a bully with a fancy hat. And I was really shocked and surprised because I hadn't encountered that. I'd heard the legend. We've all heard the legend.
Yeah.
We've all heard the legend of that peer. We've never actually met that peer. And I couldn't pull this woman out of a police lineup, which I guess is good. But just, and I understand, people are people and you're dealing with people, and there's an aspect of if you're wearing a fancy hat, people are expecting you to be on, even if you're not really in the mood to be on. So, your first impression of someone in a fancy hat might be they're having a horrible, horrible day. And just as a last minute, as an afterthought, they put their fancy hat on. Now, was it the best choice to put the fancy hat on?
Was it the best choice to go to the event at all?
Yeah,
rule, having a bad day, walk away, don't go. Go ahead.
Yeah. Everybody should read Zoff's rules.
Thank you.
Great. Part of it is don't be the person that you've heard about. There are a lot of, I say that there are peers who inspire me. You're on that short list, though.
Aw, thanks.
Well, it can't be you giving me imposter syndrome. I have to return the favor at least a little bit.
Now, but see, the thing is, Tommaso, and I was going to do this later, but I really think you're awesome and you inspire me. I have to be honest, like true confession time, I have not touched my ukulele since May. I have not touched it. I look at it and move it out of the way when I sweep. and think, oh, I should pick that up again. But I mean, I have had COVID really has hit me hard in that
Yeah.
world. I just have not written a story. I have not touched the ukulele, and it's like my goal this summer now is to go to my favorite river spot by the Cuyahoga River and start playing my ukulele again because I went to the river right after my knee surgery and there was a woman literally playing her French horn. Like you could hear, brah, 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 brah. I was like, this is a tuba. And I go to the river and if this woman had the chutzpah to play her French horn at the river, I'm going to play my ukulele at the river. Anyway, but you inspire me because you have done more and dived in deeper and farther.
So
So
much.
there. All right, so back to Pierce.
Right, so don't be the person that you were warned about. If you're fighting, take the blow. I don't care how important the thing is. There is a fighter, there is a fencer I will not name. I have watched him and he will not lose. He's a better fencer than I. He's, quote, further along as a fencer than I. He will not lose to a woman if it's important. You know, we see that. And we see, oh, that's who gets fancy fencing awards. We hear about people in crown tourney. Oh, well, he's just, you know, no one will take it from him because he's an unbelt. He won't win because he's an, you know, we hear about, you know, I've watched Crown. I've never seen in a lot of bouts I've watched, I've never seen a bad one where, oh yeah, he was obviously hit and he didn't, you know, I've never seen that, but you see it in a lot of other tournaments.
Yeah.
And you hear about it. So you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be someone who is impatient. And it's, you know, it's tough for me. I'm not big on patience. That if someone comes up to you for the 15th time asking how they should pay Karslama, and you really want to send them, you know, just listen to it a whole bunch of times. A whole bunch of really good players have versions of Karslama online. Just listen, but have to be more patient than that and sit there and do and do that with them, even if I'm not feeling the patience, because there is something that you contribute and you owe it to, even if you're not in the SCA, you owe it to your art to try to pass that art along. So if you have something keyboard wise that I can show someone who's coming along how to do, oh, so you do this, or you don't play those notes because the bass player is playing those notes, and you play these other notes instead. And that's why that the way they can do that is that he's not playing that because someone, the guitar player is playing there, the bass player is playing there, we play here, and it sounds beautiful. And that's a revelation. People don't know how to do things like that, how to fit the parts of a band together so that it all works together. It's not just a matter of everybody playing the chords really, really loud and fast. And, you know, unless you're the Dead Kennedys or Flipper or someone like that, there's ways to do that. There's ways, if you're sitting with there's three people playing odes, someone playing whatever they call that flute, and a bunch of drummers, there's ways that that group can work together so it sounds better than a bunch of individuals all playing the same stuff that you're not going to know unless you've done it 100 times.
Right, and
And
that's why like I've always wanted to play when I was better at the ukulele with like a dance band. Do you know what I mean?
mhm.
Like when people are dancing, I would love to sit down, but it's so imposing to sit there and write. And I know that I'm a peer, but and so people are like, oh, and that's really not me. Like, and I sit there and watch the dance groups and go, you guys are amazing. I wish I could, but I don't even know where to start. I mean, I do now. I know I need to get the music and learn the music, and then I can start joining in. But when you talk about that patience, um, how did you develop that patience then with people? Where did that come from for you?
I'll let you know when I get there.
Oh, poo.
It is. It can be so, because if I'm freshly caffeinated, it's easy. If I'm not caffeinated yet, if we had a rough drive and maybe I need 15 more minutes before I have the people, it can be hard. And sometimes sometimes one advantage you have as a musician is you can go off in the corner and play, and people will leave you alone because you're adding such an atmosphere. We were up at Day at the Castle, which is up. We don't run it anymore because that group folded. But I was sitting in the corner, and I had just finished my first transcription of the Ren guitar piece, the Madonna that I've been working on, and I was working out the notes, learning how to play the thing, and I spent about an hour and a half just play 3 notes, okay, play 3 notes, okay, play 3 notes, just working through it really, really slowly. Then I went to lunch, and someone stopped me and said, "Oh, your music was just so wonderful." I think, wow, just if I could play it, it would be great. Oh, thank you. You're so very kind. I loved it.
Right,
With the
fake it till you
hardest,
make it.
and every we talk about imposter syndrome. Every performer of any kind is a head case. Now there are musicians that don't like to perform. I was talking to someone at St. Cecilia last time we ran it 2 years ago, and he was saying that his ultimate thing to do in music was he wanted people to come to his house with a bottle of wine, and they're going to sit and read music all together, which is great. I have friends that like to do that. I'm a little bit more of a performer. You get that charge from interacting with the audience, and every performer is a little bit of a head case. And no matter how good you are, when you sit down after whatever you do, you sit there and you debrief yourself. Okay, well, that note, I could have done this with that note. I really wasn't happy with the way that worked. And I got to watch the intonation here because it's easy to mess that up. And you just start deconstructing it and trying to think, okay, this is what I'm going to do better next time. And then when your brain is in that space, someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, Zoph, that performance was amazing. I couldn't believe how wonderful that was." You know what that's like. We go through that, and we all go through that, and that's very hard to learn as a performer. And you get, if you've seen me do anything twice, you have heard the same intro both times. And the reason that's true is because after the first time I did something where I had to get up and do an intro, someone came up to me and said, "Hey, Charles, don't apologize and tell people how awful your thing is going to be. So if you aren't sure what to say, rehearse what you're going to say."
I tell people, because I was a professional actress for a while, that I rehearse from the minute I stand up and walk in front of the
Yes,
fire to the
absolutely.
moment I sit down. Now, I can improvise off on my stories. The words are never always the same, but I know where I move my hands, where I step, where
Mhm.
everything comes from. I know my introductions. And it's one of the things I wish I could help more performers understand, is that exactly what you said. Memorize your introduction. If you're going to do an outro, memorize that too.
If I have to fuss with a music stand and I'm playing a guitar piece, you will hear a story about how guitar players were terribly low-class people and not well thought of. And all of those little blurbs that you've heard me do while I'm fussing with my music stand, I rehearse them specifically for, I've got to fuss with my music stand. I don't want people to be bored to tears while they watch, the 15th person today fuss with a stupid music stand. But all that little stuff is stuff that, I had a conversation, someone I was in China, and one of the other keyboard players was like, "Charles, how'd you get so good?" It's like, "I've been doing this for more than twice as long as you've been alive."
Right. Right. Practice, practice, practice. Same way
and
you get
and
to Carnegie Hall.
yeah, and there's just a lot of things. There's a lot of unspoken things, and as a performer, there are so many moving parts to the performance. not just everything mechanical, or one of the Muppet performers, I think, used the expression, so much craft that goes into the performance. And even especially like if you're doing a period piece, there's so much other preparation. I did a Greek myth for one of the Bardic Madnesses online. And when you do a Greek myth, the first thing you have to do is do a really hard misogyny wipe, because there is so much misogyny in the Greek myths. It's awful. They really didn't like their wives very much. But you really have to go through and say, okay, gotta go. Is it still a story? Okay, yes, it's still a story. How does it read? Oh, it really makes it sound awful. So let's fit in. And there's a lot of work you have to go into just to take something, a lot of the period stuff, just to make it so that you're not offensive to a modern audience, because they didn't have modern ideas. There's a good chunk of the Castiga Santa Maria you can't sing at all because they're just awful, horrible, anti-Semitic, anti-Muslim group.
Right, same with Canterbury Tales. I mean,
Yeah.
people love Canterbury Tales. It's like, have you read The Second Nun's Tale? Have you read that? Like, and that's not the only one that is so anti-Semitic, it's horrendous.
Now, do you find, I mean, again, I'm a novice storyteller kind of working on my stuff. Do you find that people in the SCA want it to be updated, or do you find that more people kind of talk about like, well, if you had left it the way it is, it's more period? Like, I understand not wanting to perform something that is anti-Semitic. Like, I get that that's just something you want to say, or something that is anti anybody. But like, we're talking about the misogyny in the Greek myth. So I don't know. My head goes right to, aren't some people going to be like, well, you didn't really tell it the way it's supposed to be, or something? Have you ever encountered that?
I really hope I don't run into the person in the SCA who's defending misogyny.
Well, yeah, okay. Yes.
I hope I don't meet that person. One advantage, and it's sometimes advantage, sometimes disadvantage. I have resting grump face, so I don't get a lot of feedback except from the people that know me. People that don't know me are not going to come up to me randomly and tell me something negative because I have this expression that
Right.
which looks horrible, but Zill's laughing because she's seen
I've
it.
never heard of anybody getting bad feedback when they tell them when they've modernized a story to get rid of the misogyny and other things. I've never heard of that happening.
I guess what I was asking is, can you modernize something too much?
No.
No.
Yeah. Oh, sure you can.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
think of Julius Caesar, West Coast venue, and you'll know it when I mention it, where it's modern dress and Caesar's got Secret Service guys around him with the little earpieces and they're carrying guns. Mark Fisher?
I don't know.
Amphitheater venue in LA.
Okay. I saw a college here in Jersey do Caesar, and they set the whole thing in Nazi Germany.
Oh, that's a choice.
And I was like, and that's exactly, I mean, literally that curtain opened up and you heard the audience just kind of collectively RCA dog that, just like, what am I watching?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, literally lights down, curtain open, and you're like, am I at a rally? Like you wanted to immediately leave. So, yes, I think you can modernize.
Okay, so but yeah, yes, but no. As in, it takes experience on how to update a story to not offend a modern audience member, but still give it that that the SCA, the period zhuzh that it needs. Is that a good way of putting it?
Yeah. You want to keep your reference for an SCA audience. You want to keep your references to kings who were alive at the time. If you're if you're a singer and you know that William Kidd was executed in the 18th century, then you know that My Name is Captain Kidd is not a period song and shouldn't be entered in period piece. which I've seen done. But you could it's a really modern song, but you could backdate that by naming some pirate who was executed in the 15th century. There's plenty of them, if you wanted to do that. So it's something that you have to do, because no one's going to sit there and listen to, we did Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and it took us, 2.5 hours?
Yeah.
Something like that. You see Master Brendan did his version, it still clocks in at 45 minutes.
He also has a 20-minute version that he does.
He did that at 50 Year at the Barn Tavern for a tavern crown, and he had everybody. I was amazed. Speaking of people who inspire me.
So we are getting close to wrap up time. So Lucas, let you ask the final question that we always ask.
Yeah, I mean, our surprise question. So where do you see the growth points for the SCA? Where could we get better? Where do you see us kind of taking the next step?
Well, when I started, you could not register a Korean name. If you wanted to register a Japanese or a Chinese name, you had to do an individually attested name. That meant you had to do all the research, because there were no canonical book of Chinese and Japanese names that you can use. Well, now we have one. Now we've discovered, hey, guess what? There were Koreans who went to Europe during our period. So, hey, now you can register Korean names. When I started, we didn't have equality of inspiration. We have equality of inspiration. My barony, it was a mother-daughter, but we had the first same-sex baroness and baroness. It was a mother-daughter team, so it was okay for the Western Michigan crowd, but that we were the first to do it. And if you look at the SCA history banner, there's Colette and Antonia right there. Like, wow, that's us. Go Andlecrag. So, there's definitely progress being made. There have been some prominent incidents of truly bad behavior getting censured. Great. I'm told that before my time that probably wouldn't have happened. Those are all great things. One thing we need to do is make sure that newcomers aren't lost. It's very easy to overlook people that are new. It's very easy for them to get lost in the shuffle. And oh my God, I went to an event and nobody talked to me. And we have in the far western edge of Andlecrag, we have Sofka, who is wonderful. She will track you down if you are new. If you don't have clothes, she will put clothes on you. Brilliant shadowing. And we need more people like her who have that willingness to reach out. We need more. If your first day on the field as a fighter, you shouldn't feel like a baby seal.
Yeah.
Your first day on the field as a fencer, you shouldn't feel like a pincushion. Your first sewing circle, someone shouldn't give you an Elizabethan pattern. There has to be we have to be better with our on-ramp. Now, we have one of our local people was a very experienced seamstress. When she joined, the first thing she made was a gorgeous Elizabethan. But not everybody is a seamstress that's 15 years, making complicated patterns
right
when they come in. So we need to, because everybody likes to make the beautiful garb that I can't wear because it's way too hot for me. But everybody likes to make that, but we need some kind of an on-ramp so that they get them into something that looks good. A tunic that fits well, that's not made out of shiny polyester, will look good and get them into the game. And then people won't look at them funny because they're in shiny polyester garb.
Right.
or tavern wenchwear, which is, and someone shows up in tavern wenchwear and people give them grief about it. Well, wait a minute, are you giving them clothes? You
That's what I
know,
wore at my first Pensic. I was romping around in a leather bodice, cavalier hat, big old skirt, chemise, whip on my hip.
I'm sure you look better in that than I would.
I look pretty good. I can't lie. But that was also 25 years ago,
Yeah.
plus 27 years ago. Anyway,
But I think we need more of an on ramp for people, because a lot of the time, I came in as an experienced musician, and some of the musicians I'm a little frightened of because I was at music school and I did music school things, and you're scaring me. So what are you doing to someone who comes
right,
in, they play a little guitar, and what I say when I teach my guitar, my ukulele is a Renaissance guitar, and I teach the history of the four-course Renaissance guitar. Its similarity to the modern baritone ukulele, and that you can play the music from one on the other. And then I say something like, if you have a Telecaster, I want you playing period music on your Telecaster. I don't want you to wait until you have $5,000 to get a lute or $3,000 to get a Ren guitar before you start playing period music. I want you playing period music on whatever you have. I want you singing it on whatever voice you have.
right.
I don't want to be the one who says, no, you can't play that music on that instrument because that's not a period instrument.
Which has been said. I mean, that's the thing that's
Oh
really
yeah,
sad. I
it
mean,
does get.
people say that to other people, which is all right. But
And there's a
we're out of
difference
time.
between A and S entry, where yeah, we look at those things,
Right.
and I'm learning this music, and someday I'll have an instrument that I can play, and someday when I win the lottery, I'll have head to toe Maximilian armor. Meanwhile, I've got a pickle barrel and I'm covering it with a tunic.
All right. So time's up. Tomasso, thank you so much for being
Thank
our
you
guest.
so
This
very
was
much.
really a great conversation. I'm so glad that you said yes. Um, Lucas, who's our guest in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks, it is the current baronial bardic champion of Setmore Swamp, Ulfar Gildir, who I probably butchered that a little bit, but he's been a very good friend of mine for now probably about 15 years in mundane life. And we've started to intersect now as far as society is concerned. So I'm really happy he's going to be on.
Awesome. Again, this is simply SCAdian, no title required with oh wait. Lord Lucas, who just received his silver brooch out from the consuls of the East Kingdom, were kind enough to give it to him. So no titles required though. So Lucas and Zoph talking with Tomasso Franceschi. Thank you so much, Tomasso. Have a wonderful evening. And we're out. And